The Vampire with a Severed Torso, written and read by Tony Capobianco. On her back, resting in bed, a young woman dreamt as a gentle rain fell. Through the bedroom window, a man with the wings of a bat glared at the sleeping young lady. The lady's bedroom was upstairs on the second floor of the house. The man flapped his wings and, like a monstrous hummingbird, hovered by the window. His face seemed somewhat humanoid, but it didn't look exactly human. As unsettling as the creature's upper body was, it was its lack of a lower body that was even more revolting. Bloody and slimy intestines dangled down from its waist, where its legs should have been. It looked as though the creature had been ripped in half by hungry zombies. The grotesque bat-like creature reached out with its hands and quietly removed the screen from the window. After the screen was taken out of the way, the creature's lips parted slightly. Slithering out through its mouth was a snake-like proboscis. The serpentine proboscis zigzagged from left to right as it drew closer to the sleeping woman. Then, the end of the proboscis opened up and revealed two fangs. Coiled up, it struck the sleeping woman's neck. The fangs had injected a paralyzing toxin into the woman's bloodstream. The impact of the venom was instantaneous. The sting of the bite had woken the young woman up. Although she was filled with fear, she was incapable of expressing it. Immobilized by the bat-like creature's venom, only her eyes could communicate the awful terror that she felt. The woman's blood flowed through the proboscis and into the ghastly creature. The hideous vampire drank and drank. It used its proboscis like a straw to suck up a lethal amount of her blood. Once the flying beast had drained her to the last drop, it released its grip. Retracting like a hose, the serpent-like proboscis coiled back up inside of the vampire. Droplets of rain fell onto the creature. Water dripped from its flapping wings. With its hunger satiated, the man and bat hybrid flew off into the dark of night. The humanoid bat that killed the innocent sleeping woman was a Vampanggal. The name, Vampanggal, derived from the lore of a monster from the Philippines. For centuries, many people of the Philippines believed that the Manananggal prowled the night. The Manananggal was a human that turned into a monster with bat wings and fed upon people while they slept. When the sun fell, the torso separated from its lower body. The monstrous upper body flew all night, and then had to reattach to its lower body in the morning. While there were many similarities between the Manananggal and the Vampanggal, there were crucial differences. Manananggals were usually women, and they were said to have had a particularly disgusting fondness for feeding upon the babes inside of their pregnant mothers. How one became a Manananggal and methods of destroying one also differed from what we came to know about the Vampanggal. For example, in Manananggal lore, you can destroy them by sprinkling salt, garlic, or holy water on their separated lower body, but this doesn't work on Vampanggals. From here on, I will only be speaking of the Vampanggal because it is the Vampanggal that poses a growing threat. Vampanggals can be men or women. The first case of a Vampanggal was identified in early 2023. As of the time of this recording, there have been 26 confirmed cases. The first known case of a Vampanggal was Natalie, a 27-year-old woman from Savannah, Georgia. On January 6, 2023, Natalie made beef fried rice and mixed in some scrambled eggs. A week later, on the evening of January 13, 2023, she suffered excruciating pain. After texting her boyfriend Paul for help, he immediately came over and got her into his car. On their way to the hospital, Natalie screamed in agony. The intensity of her yelling called to mind a woman suffering labor pains. The car had barely made it out of the driveway when her torso violently severed itself from her hips, legs, and feet. Natalie's intestines protruded out from where her pelvis should have been. Two large wings that resembled those of a vampire bat had spontaneously sprung out from her back. The face of the intelligent and pretty young woman had morphed into a grotesque combination of her former face with the face of a bat. Although her face remained hairless, the bat-like similarities were unmistakable. Paul's heart pounded as he began to sweat. His brown eyes dilated as the skin on his face tightened. Looking at something that resembled his girlfriend, but was clearly no longer the person that he loved, caused him to have a deep sense of revulsion and fear. In response to the unnatural metamorphosis, Paul screamed in terror. The car swerved all over the road as Natalie underwent the gruesome change. Looking at her intestines spilling out and rubbing against the passenger seat, Paul gagged. Acidic stomach acid burned his throat on its way up to his mouth. The regurgitation led him to taste, for the second time, the spaghetti dinner that he had been eating when he had received Natalie's text for help. The monstrous new version of Natalie turned her head and stared at Paul. A terrible hunger sought to fill the cold emptiness behind her eyes. Parting her lips in the manner that she had done hundreds of times before when she kissed him, it came out from her. The nauseating proboscis slithered out from her mouth and over her lips. Paul looked at the sickening abomination and lost control of the car. The car went off of the road and became stuck in a drainage ditch. The accident forced his forehead forward into the deployed airbag. Overflowing with fear, he instinctively tried to flee from the car. In the chaos of the moment, he had forgotten that he was restrained by his fastened seatbelt. That momentary delay cost him his life. Using the razor-sharp claws that had replaced what used to be her fingernails, Natalie shred the passenger side airbag. After freeing herself of the restraint, she launched her serpentine proboscis toward Paul's exposed neck. The end of the proboscis opened. Two fangs descended from the opening of the trunk and sunk into his throat. Natalie slurped up her boyfriend's blood until there was nothing left to take. Paul's previously flushed face had turned white. He was dead. Killed by his Vampanggal girlfriend, the young man would never get the chance to pursue his bright future. The second known Vampanggal case was a 23-year-old man named Marcus. On January 10th, 2023, Marcus cooked some steak and eggs for breakfast. An amateur boxer, he made sure that his protein intake was high. After breakfast, he went for his morning run before he went to train at the gym. In the ring, his record stood at 33 wins and 6 defeats. Marcus trained hard and fought hard. His mom would scornfully say that he partied hard too. His father walked out on him and his mother when he was only 4 years old. Life was always a fight for Marcus and his mother. That, perhaps, played a role in the fighting spirit that served him well in the boxing ring. Marcus had been feeling strange for about a week. At first, he believed that it was just a cold or the flu. Sickened by a fever and chills, His ability to train had been restricted. He grew sicker every day. When the sun set on January 17th, so too did his life as he knew it. Sweat poured down his face. The acute muscle pain that he suffered was only rivaled by the pain in his bones. As Marcus violently stretched with his arms raised, his first transformation occurred. Wings grew out of his back. Pale and distorted, his face took on some of the features of a hairless bat. By that time, he had blacked out. He was no longer in control. The transformation was soon completed when his torso severed itself from his legs. Dripping with blood, his intestines dangled from his midsection. It looked as though he had been disemboweled. A security camera had caught images of his upper body flying around a neighbor's house. No longer conscious or in control, Marcus searched for food. Hunger drove him to the window of a sleeping young woman. With light rain falling, he removed the screen, opened the window, and began to feed. Like other infected people, Marcus had no recollection of anything that had happened after the transformation had concluded. Also, like the rest of the infected, Marcus had eaten beef. Some packages of beef appeared to have been tainted. Neither the source of the contamination nor its nature were known. What was certain was that each infected person had consumed beef that came from the same farm. Yet, the cattle did not test positive for any virus or bacterial infection. The lack of any infection was itself strange. It was unusual to find a large farm with no sick animals. They all seemed to be in perfect health. Consequently, there was no known virus to test for. Public health officials began to wonder if the cattle really had been the source of the Vampanggal outbreak. At the same time, they found the fact that the only thing that the infected Vampangals had in common was the source of the meat that they had eaten a week before their first transformation. The greatest fear resulted from a lack of knowledge and understanding. The terrifying reality was that there was no way to prevent such an outbreak from happening again. Having more questions than answers, the CDC and the FDA did not inform the public of all of the facts. They certainly did not inform people of the vampire-like infection. Instead, in an attempt to mitigate panic, their official statements regarding the infected spoke of how there was no cause for alarm at the time. They said that a couple of cows had been infected by an unknown bacteria and that the meat from the infected animals had been destroyed. Government officials went on to say that there was no information that suggested a threat to the public. Neither the public nor the media were aware of the Vampangals. The media did not have evidence of their existence. The only known footage of Vampangals had been confiscated by government officials. In the absence of knowledge, various rumors and misinformation spread across social media. Only a small group of government officials and FBI agents had all the available facts. All of the known Vampangals were quarantined at a secret facility. The policy was to quarantine them rather than to destroy them. Unnecessarily destroying an infected person that had become a Vampanggal would have been unethical. By day, the afflicted behaved as normal humans. They were conscious and they could walk around in the sun. It was only at night that they transformed into the monstrous, murderous vampires. As long as they were safely confined at night, they posed no threat to anyone. Imprisoned and unable to feed, they shrieked in frustration and anger. To calm them down, an arrangement was made. Blood bags were put inside of scarecrows that were placed in their cells. Due to the fact that their proboscises could slip between the bars, bulletproof glass was used instead of the standard metal bars. Early on it was learned that the Vampangals, though difficult to kill, were not invulnerable. They possessed astonishing regenerative capabilities. While tracking one Vampanggal, an FBI agent found it as it was in the middle of feeding on a child. The agent opened fire. The bullets irritated the vampire, but they did not put it down. As the Vampanggal flapped its wings harder and tried to fly away, several other agents shot a net over it. When they put it in a prison transport vehicle, they saw that the bullet holes had already healed. As astonished as they had been by the creature's healing, they were even more astonished by what happened next. When the sun came up the next morning, the Vampanggal died. 4 other Vampangals had met the same fate. That was how the knowledge about how to destroy a Vampanggal was learned. Each morning, before sunrise, the Vampanggal must reattach itself to its lower body. If it fails to make its body whole by morning, it dies. The reason that the Vampanggal severs itself from its legs at sunset was unknown. No one understood why the transformation took place or how the process behind it worked. Vampangals were alien to human understanding and experience. A small FBI task force monitored social media for reports of sightings or attacks that fit the description of a Vampanggal. The distinct appearance and savage behavior of the Vampangals made it easy to zero in on sightings. Unlike Wendigos and Skinwalkers, which have oceans of myth that spawn waves of purported encounters, the Vampanggal was unknown. If people knew of them, then many would begin to see them everywhere. Such a situation would make monitoring for credible sightings difficult, if not impossible. The most terrifying Vampanggal case involved the De La Cruz family. One evening, Maria De La Cruz lovingly cooked tapa, a popular Filipino beef dish, for her family. Although the meal was delicious, the family of 4 grew progressively more sick over the next 6 days. The severity of their flu-like symptoms surpassed those of the worst flu that any of them had ever had. When the sun went down, so too did Alfonso de la Cruz. The husband of Maria and the father of 2 beautiful children dropped to his knees in agony. Groaning in pain, he held his head with his hands. His 2 kids, Juan and Perpetua, had never seen their father moan or cry before. Seeing their father so vulnerable for the first time added to the fear and pain that they were experiencing. The children, along with their mother, also cried out in pain. Perpetua, the youngest child, was the first member of the family to change. Father, mother, and son watched in horror as Perpetua's sweet angelic face became distorted and less human. Next, a pair of wings sprouted from her back and ripped through her blue dress. Completing her metamorphosis into a Vampanggal, her upper body tore itself apart from her pelvic bone as her wings flapped. Hovering in place, the little Vampanggal watched as each member of her family underwent the same excruciating transformation. Maria was the final family member to turn. Silence fell over the room after the transformations were completed. The transformations had occurred while the family was in the living room. The father opened the front door and the Vampanggal family flew outside. Like bats, the family of 4 erratically flew across the night sky. A half moon provided an eerie pale light before rain clouds moved in and obscured it. As the rain fell, the Vampangals searched for prey. A ravenous hunger compelled them to seek out fresh human blood. As they traversed the air, a house with a glass sliding door open drew their attention. The smell of ripe humans excited them. Hovering outside of the door, Maria slid the screen door open. Entering into the house, they were welcomed by shrill shrieks and screams. A mortal family of 4 had been seated around their dining room table. The Vampangals drew near their first meal. Opening their mouths, they launched their elephant trunk-like proboscises at the terrified family. One by one, each Vampanggal bit a terrified person. Immediately after the venom had been delivered by the bite, the victims became paralyzed. The venom had done its work. The screams had turned to whispers and then to dead silence. The De La Cruz Vampanggal family sucked up all of the available blood. They had killed an unsuspecting and innocent family. The De La Cruz family has not been identified yet. Although the FBI Vampanggal Special Task Force has searched far and wide, a number of ghastly vampires have eluded their detection. With the grotesque Vampangals prowling the darkness of the night, it would be foolish to leave your windows opened and your doors unlocked. If the flying torso of a severed vampire intrudes into your house, get out of there as fast as you can. When you hear a tapping at your window late at night, ignore it. If you make the mistake of opening the window, you very well might pay for it with your life. If you are tempted to judge those who, through no fault of their own, became infected, remember this. The next time that you eat a tasty hamburger or steak, you might become infected. You, too, could become a hideous Vampanggal with your intestines dangling exposed for the world to see. Beware when the sun sets below the horizon. Your family member, pal, or girlfriend might monstrously change before your horrified eyes. By the light of day, you would never know whether or not your father, mother, or brother has been infected. Only the darkness will reveal the fact that they have become a Vampanggal. By the time you realize what they really are, it may very well be too late. Thanks for stopping by the Haunted Half Moon Inn. I hope that you have enjoyed your stay. Before you go, please put a wooden stake through the like button and leave a comment for the spirits to read. If you did enjoy your time with us, subscribe to this undead channel. Doing those little things really helps me to reach more souls. The world is sick and hurting. It needs more horror. Help me to heal the world through horror. Together, we can haunt this world one home at a time. And always remember, just because you don't see them doesn't mean that they aren't there.